to Bolton TV. I'm Katie and I'm exploring today some parts of Bolton that I've never been to before. I'm joined today with Russ Headley. Before we talk about where we're going and what we're doing, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, so nice to see you, Katie. And I am a local lad who is a wildlife guide. So wildlife has always been my passion, my love, and I work in a local business, which is self-employed work. Nature Talks and Walks.
Wow.
It does what it says on the tin. I lead walks for the council, for schools, for wildlife charities, and I highlight anything from interesting birds and bird song to what's that fungus or slime molds. If you find a slime mold, I'll tell you. But it's basically anything. So,
yeah.
And we're here today at Smithills because it's one of the best areas, I think, in the near Bolton area for a lot of different kinds of wildlife within one walk. And have you been here before, Katie? Have you
No, so I've only been familiar with the Bolton area for the last year or so, and there's so much of it that I'm yet to explore. So completely new to the Smithills area right now. So I'm going to be a tourist, and I'd love for you to tell me all about the wildlife, the heritage, whatever you can share with me, really, and our viewers.
Well, that's fantastic. So we're going to go on a walk, and I'm going to start off with Barrow Bridge, which the sign is all about. So let's see how we go.
Let's go.
This is Deep Brook. So this
So what is it? What is growing here? What are these flowers? Are they flowers?
Good question, because they don't actually look like flowers,
Yeah.
do they? This is actually full bloom of this plant. It's as good as you're going to get.
They're tiny.
Yeah, really, really small. It's a woodland flower called a saxifrage.
Okay.
And this is a special one because it grows in woodlands and it likes wet, damp soil.
Okay.
So if you see a patch of it like this, you know that whatever's going on in the soil, there's a lot of water. Here, that's obvious because we're next to the brook. But in other places, you're like, there must be something going on under the ground, clay maybe, that's holding the water. The long name of this, and I'll test you on this later, is opposite-leaved golden saxifrage.
Okay.
Got that?
Opposite-leaved golden saxifrage. Yep.
I'm going to ask you about that later.
Okay. So when we say the Smithills Estate, what do we actually mean by that?
Yeah, so it's a great question because in Bolton we have the Smithills Hall and the Smithills Estate. So in the past it was all as one. So the Smithills Estate is a big 1,800 acre estate.
Wow.
So it's a plot of land that currently runs from Barrow Bridge, which is the village we started in, running up to the foot of Winter Hill television mast, but not including the mast.
Okay.
That plot of land is maintained now by the Woodland Trust, who purchased it a few years ago now. There was a Heritage Lottery Fund project, which I was a part of, and they funded through the lottery to be able to buy the land. The idea for that was to, one, protect the land, to stop extra building going on it, to change the landscape completely and utterly. But also to kind of highlight that it's the Woodland Trust. Their whole mission is about trees. It's about woodland. It's about showing how valuable woodland is. But this estate was different. This was not a site where they were going to plant up trees on every inch.
Okay.
They were only ever going to increase the woodland by another 10%, to come from 10% to 20%.
Okay.
We're in a wood now. This is Barrow Bridge. This was existing woodland already. The problem that the estate had, and the problem that the country has, because it's quite nice to compare the Smithills Estate to the rest of Britain,
Of course.
is that the Smithills Estate had 10% woodland. Britain has around 13% woodland, so it's comparable. In itself, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but a lot of the woodland is in pockets. So where we are here in Barrow Bridge was not connected via woodland to some pockets right at the top of the estate. And so if you're a mouse or a butterfly that lives in a wood down here and it gets very hot in summer, you might think, I need to move because it's getting too hot. I need to go uphill into the moor where it's cooler. But you're not going to leave the wood. You need constant wood, otherwise you don't feel safe. And if you therefore can't get out of this wood because it's not connected, you're stuck.
Yeah.
You're stuck in that high temperature, and you start losing some species to that, or some individuals to that. So the idea is that they would connect all the existing woodland together in little strips, with new planting. That meant, you know, you've got members of the public involved, you've got organisations involved planting these trees, and they achieved that in a 5-year project that finished in a few years ago. I can't remember exactly when. But it's still going today.
Oh wow, fascinating. So how many trees were planted then?
So amazingly, over that project, 130,000 trees were planted in total. So that gives you an idea of how many were already here and how many there's going to be in the future. It is windy today. We are an upland edge estate here in Bolton. We're on the edge of the Pennines. So trees can grow a bit slower here than in the lowland areas. The wind and the cold weather just slows down growth. So the woodland is growing. It's not going to be overnight, but it's now all in the ground. It's planted, and they have now moved on to looking at other features of wild areas of Smithills that can be improved. So looking at the moorland, for example, which we'll get to later, and looking at how we can maintain that and prop that up a bit more.
Fascinating, thank you ever so much. So what kind of activities have been here? Like what sort of industries were based? Was it always just a woodland or?
Yeah, it's a good question, because looking around today, it's a woodland. You can hear the brook, you can hear the nuthatch in the background perhaps, and the trees are here. But the trees have not always been here in every part of Barrow Bridge. Some areas of it have been quite cleared in the past. And there has been industry here. There was a lot of industry here at various points. The whole of Barrow Bridge is a village that was built for the workers that worked on the estate. And there were various things that came off the moor that came down this path we're walking on to kind of get it to the bottom of the estate to sell it off to other places. The brook itself was also utilised at various points. The power of water was used to generate electricity and energy. And so it's had very mixed heritage, and that is celebrated in the signs we have. You can get interpretation of that, stuff like that. And you know, you have the 63 steps, for example, which we'll go down later, that were built for the workers. They were built to encourage help the workers to walk down from where they worked at the top of the estate down to where they lived at the bottom. So there's always been people here, but sometimes it's about recreation, sometimes it's about health, and sometimes they've worked here, and they worked hard here as well.
Wow, okay, fascinating, thank you. I came across an article the other day that it was on the Bolton News and the Manchester Evening News, saying that Greater Manchester might be about to get its first ever rainforest. Now, what do they mean by that?
Yeah, it sounds a bit confusing, doesn't it? Because if I say rainforest to you, what do you think of?
I think of tropical weather and parrots, and I do not think of this woodland specifically.
Or Bolton.
Or Bolton in general.
Generally.
Yeah, that's true.
And it is a confusing thing to suggest, but it's true. That what it is talking about is that there is a rainforest, potentially in Bolton. If it's found to be a rainforest, it will be the first official rainforest to be classified as such. But there are no parrots, because this is not a tropical rainforest. This is a temperate rainforest. Temperate meaning the North Hemisphere, colder, seasonal. So we have summer, then we have autumn, then we have winter and spring. So that's what it would mean. And aside from temporal, the only thing that would make a forest a rainforest is a large amount of rain. And do we have a lot of rain in Bolton? We have a lot of rain in Bolton. If you're not from Bolton, you won't know, but we have a lot of rain. We should do anyway. And so how do you prove that this is a rainforest without putting out a beaker and saying like, oh, well, it's rained 2 inches today? Is by looking at the plant life. Now, what's been found by the team at the Woodland Trust, who manage the site currently, is that there are several plants here that look as if they are indicators of it being a rainforest and of it having enough rain to qualify for that status.
What examples of plants or wildlife is there then?
Yeah, so but there's a few, and one of the best ones is mosses. So down here on a log just behind us here, there are plenty of mosses of different shapes, different varieties and sizes. Mosses need water. They all need water, but some of them need more water than others.
Right.
Some of them cannot survive on too little rain, and therefore if you have that kind of moss, you might have a rainforest. If you find 3 of those types, you're even more likely to have rainforest, and so on. The more indicators you find, the more likely that you've got a rainforest. And you know, arguably other plants in the forest that love water might also suggest this, and we've actually already seen one, Katie. Now I'm going to quiz you now. Do you remember what it was called?
Right. Is this the flower that we saw earlier?
Yeah. The one that's just down here.
Oh, this one. Yeah, we've got it. Opposite and ended golden saxifrage.
I'm going to give you that one.
Okay.
That was
Very close.
very
Very
good.
close.
So it's saxifrage.
Saxifrage.
So
Saxifrage.
you could say saxifrage, you were like, got it, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's opposite-leaved golden
Leaves.
saxifrage.
There we go.
And yeah, that is one that, as I said earlier, loves water.
Yeah.
And so is another indication that like there's a lot of water here. So it points us towards it being a rainforest. But why is that important? Why are the Bolton Evening News or Manchester Evening News talking about it? It's because with a rainforest habitat, it's unique.
Yeah.
It's unique potentially in Greater Manchester, and the life here, therefore, is also unique. You won't find the kind of plants and potentially some of the insects in other forests in the region. Historically, looking at records, there is mention of rainforest being here, but we're talking a long time ago. So this forest hasn't been classified as a rainforest for a very long time. And the team at the Woodland Trust have been exploring the possibilities that in these cloughs, which are the valleys we're standing in, that it's harbouring rainforest that is not seen outside of places like Cornwall and Devon. I think parts of Wales as well have them as well. Generally on the coast where it is wetter than other places. And so when the article says we could be about to get one, we've already got one. We're just trying to work out, is that what we've got?
Is it actually what it is? Wow, fascinating. What sort of insects are you more likely to see in a rainforest habitat compared to an ordinary woodland, if you will?
Well, you'd expect to see similar insects, but there'll be certain species in that group that are specially designed for a rainforest. So an example of, you know, we're looking at moss here. There's a very small kind of invertebrate called a springtail. It's like the size of a full stop.
Oh wow.
It's tiny. And they live in the soil. There's lots of different types of them. They have a tail that tucks under their, let's call it the tummy.
Yeah.
And if they feel danger, they flick the tail and they, like a flea, leap off. So it's a springtail. There is a certain kind of springtail called a moss springtail. It lives under mosses, and that's its speciality. That's what it eats, and so that's where it will live. If you don't have enough mosses or the right types of mosses, you may not find that kind of springtail. Why does that matter? Because the more you have in this habitat, and you've got things like blue tits, blue tits will eat things like that, or other bugs will eat things like the springtail, and the blue tits will eat those bugs. So it just means that if you're a blue tit living in this forest, you might have more food options throughout the year to feed yourself and feed your chicks. Which means that when we walk in it, we have more chances of seeing nature and wildlife.
Okay, wow, that makes a lot of sense, thank you.
So what we have down here is a queen buff-tailed bumblebee.
Right.
Now, in March, this March 2025, the bumblebees you're probably going to see are very big and chunky because they've just woken up from hibernation, and she is currently looking for a place to set up her hive for the next year.
Right.
She's pregnant, she's got lots of eggs, and she's looking for soft ground or maybe a rotting log like this to make a hive in, and to start creating a new hive for the next year. So yeah, there are about 20 species of bumblebee. There's a lot more solitary bees that all live on their own, but that is called the buff-tailed bumblebee.
And maybe I should already know this, but how were you able to identify that that was a queen bee?
I was, and the main reason is that you would call it getting your eye in. So if you spend enough time in nature, you start to just, you know, like It was a bee. It
Yes.
was a bee, but it was a big bee.
It
That's
was
a big bee.
yeah.
So at this time of year, it's a big bee. It's March. It's queen.
Okay.
It's got to be.
It's got to be.
But I will also say that with the buff-tailed bumblebee, they're really handy because the buff as a colour is orange. So whenever you see a name of an animal with buff in it, that's what it means.
Right, okay.
The buff-tailed bumblebee does have an orange bum,
Oh, okay.
but only the queen has it,
Ah.
and she had it.
Right.
So there is a trick with that one.
Yeah,
that the others
that
don't
was
have.
pretty clear with that one. Wow, fascinating.
So great to see.
Yeah. So I've just noticed there's a variety of different types of moss, it would seem, different species here. But there's kind of a bluier one down there. Now why is it that way?
Yeah, so this is another thing to look out for to classify your woodland. We're sitting on this old rotting native tree that's fallen. It's being slowly turned into soil by insects inside. The moss which is covering this, there's various mosses. You can see different shapes of leaf, different sizes of stalk.
Yeah.
And so they're all living here. But as you say, Katie, one of these does not look like the others.
No.
This one is not green, this is blue.
Yeah.
And that's because this is actually a lichen.
Ah.
Now I like lichen because they're, sorry, I had to. They are not a plant.
Right.
They're not an animal, and they're not a fungus.
Oh, okay.
So, are you familiar with the term symbiosis?
Vaguely from my biology.
Yeah.
days.
What I mean, if you were to what do you understand from that word?
I
am putting you on the
yeah,
spot
you
now.
really are putting me on the spot now. Something like it's kind of like a hybrid, like it's a mix of something. It's like fused with something else. That's kind of what I would guess.
Yeah, exactly right. With the added note to say that the fusion benefits both partners.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's a symbiosis that we're going to do this because I'm going to benefit from it and you're going to benefit from it.
Right.
This, therefore, is the whole word came from this thing.
Oh, okay.
There wasn't a word symbiosis before the realization that the lichen is a combination of an algae and a fungus.
Ah.
Algae is a plant, fungus is a fungus.
A fungus, yeah.
They come together because they're exploiting places that are very difficult to live in for mosses or fungi. But by combining into a single structure, they can live on the vertical side of a tree or a rock often, which is somewhere where plants just can't make it, and neither can fungi.
Ah.
The off blue is the algae getting some food from the sun through photosynthesis. But the fungal side is still pulling some food from the rotting wood we're sat on.
Oh, right.
And they work together.
Right, okay.
Confusingly, there's therefore a lichen there, that's one living organism. The algae can live without the fungus. So that's two living organisms. The fungus can also live without the algae. That's three.
Wow.
And in recent years, we've realised that not only is this a combination of one algae and one fungus, but in many cases, it's a combination of one algae and up to 15 different species of fungi coming together to form this.
Okay.
At what point do we stop calling this a single thing and say, this is just an active colony?
Yeah.
And once you start looking at other animals, including us, because we've got gut bacteria that are acting independently right now that you haven't got control of.
Yeah, true, actually.
What are we? Are we a single being or multiple?
Or are we just an army?
Or is that too mind-bounding?
That's a lot of thought.
We'll do another video on that.
Yeah. Fascinating. Thank you. Yeah. So these steps that we're just about to come about, they look a lot more modern than some other stuff that we've seen. Are they pretty recent?
Yeah, the railings certainly are. They're much more recent, but the steps themselves are actually quite old. They are the 63 steps.
Okay.
So these were put in hundreds of years ago for the workers who would work up on the mines or up on the moor on different aspects of the estate. And the tramway would finish somewhere behind us. The workers would then walk down the steps to be able to get to their homes at the end of the night. And there are, it's called 63 steps. Are you up for a counting match?
Yes, of course.
Right, let's go.
Let's go.
See if we can count it.
Let's do it.
1,
61, 62, 63.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Fab. The system works.
Perfect.
So yeah, that is the 63 steps.
Ah,
right.
makes sense.
63. And that is barrel woods, Bowerbridge Woods. So what we're going to now do is head to another part of the estate. As I mentioned, the rainforest element is something that's ongoing in this estate at the moment. So the Woodland Trust are looking at how to firstly identify it, the reason being to then protect it and foster it, and so we can enjoy it for the future.
Sounds wonderful. Perfect. So we've come at the estate now to a place called Walker Falls.
Yes, so this is midway through the estate. There is a car park here. It's a newer car park, although it's not that new anymore actually, but it was built here when the project was happening for the lottery fund, with the idea that it opened up access to a lot more people to get up into the moorland. And obviously, if you know your history locally with the moorland, there's a lot of history about access and about barred access and about times when the public were not allowed up here. So kind of part of the ethos was to encourage people to be able to get here, whether you were a keen walker or whether you didn't have much mobility at all. You can park up here, get the view of Manchester and Bolton, Bowerbridge chimneys just there, and obviously also with the handy maps, head up off into the moorland, and that's where we're about to head now.
Yeah, perfect.
Let's go have a look.
To it. So there's lots of new trees being planted here. When were these planted?
So this is part of the initial project for the Woodland Trust, which was between 2018 and 2023, I think it was, or 2017 to 2022 possibly. These are planted by the public. So not all the trees were planted by the public because there were 130,000 trees. That would be a lot of work for the public to do by hand. But a lot of it here was done by the people who would come in, and you know, when they were coming in, I often asked them, why have you come here? Why are you doing this? And they often did say along the lines of, we want to give back. It was that sense of giving back to the community, but also the countryside that they might have walked in a lot. But we also had people from Oxfordshire. We had people from up and down the country who knew about this project. As I mentioned earlier, this project was nearly a multi-million pound project, £1.9 million project, and that was a match-funded project, which means that the lottery gave half, on the understanding that the trust would have to fundraise the other half. And so the public were kind of said, like, right, we have an opportunity. We can protect this plot of land, we can plant new trees and connect the habitat, but we need funds to do it, and they got it. So that was done publicly as well.
Wow, wonderful. So what kind of trees are being planted here then? Yeah,
so this is a real mixture that we've got around here. So as you probably experienced when we walked to this little bit, the ground is quite spongy.
Bouncy,
bouncy is a good word for it. So, as we've been talking about, we get a lot of rain in Bolton, and we're in the foothills of the Pennines. So there's actively a lot of water here at any one time. So we have to think about that when we plant trees, because some trees like their feet wet, others do not. So the right tree in the right place is how we do it. Next to the water, you have trees like alder. These are alder trees. All behind is actually adult trees. They're alders. I know that because, one, there's a high chance of that because they're next to water. But if you look at them, you've got cones on the top as well, which tell you that that's what we call an alder tree. So some of these are alders. Here you've got hawthorn behind us. Hawthorn's a really classic British tree. This is a very young one, obviously, that was probably planted about 4 or 5 years ago and might ultimately be 8 years old currently. And it has got thorns to the name. It's got little spikes.
Of course.
So don't grab hold of it. But the idea is to stop herbivores eating it. That's why it's got thorns. So you've got hawthorn there. We also have got a good range. We've got some willows in the places over there. The really tall ones are often willows because they grow the fastest, but they live the shortest lifespans. Their strategy is grow fast, die young. The oldest living trees, like oaks, grow slow, live long. So the idea of this wood when you create it is that these younger trees will grow up, and in their shadow and protection, the younger trees will grow in their shadow. So just as these trees mature and fall over naturally, there is a young oak ready to step into the gap they left behind.
Now, I think an important question that still stands is, why is it that we're using plastic then to protect the trees? I think some people would think that's perhaps an odd choice of material.
Yeah, because it is something that we're culturally stepping away from,
Yeah.
isn't it? So single-use plastic has gone, plastic cutlery, plastic straws, we've all got them. Or got rid of them, but we haven't got rid of plastic tree tubes, and we're doing that in an ecological way. So yeah, why would we not? The simple fact is, the tube is there to protect the tree.
Right.
It has to stay on this tree for years until the tree is old enough to cope for itself, and that could be, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, probably plus 5 years. If you use anything, first point, anything else that's biodegradable will degrade within 2 years, and then you've lost the protection. You'd have to replace it, and there are 130,000 trees here, so that would be a lot of work, a lot of manpower, and it risks the tree just being eaten in that time, to be honest. But the second reason is that there are tree tubes you can buy now, for example, that suggest that they are healthier for the environment, that are photo-degradable. Now at a glance you're like, oh great, that sounds really good. They break down. The package that actually got sent to me to say like, why don't you use this, described it as, it doesn't harm the earth. Now you tell me what that means.
It doesn't add any damage, I guess. It doesn't.
It's pretty vague though, isn't it? It doesn't really harm the earth. What is it? I mean, harm the earth as in the planet? As in the, what are you talking about? Because if you actually think about the wording, photo-degradable, photo meaning light, meaning the sunshine shining now, when hitting this, is quickly or slowly degrading it. So it's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. But vitally, it was also made of recycled plastic. And what's worse than having a plastic tube is having a plastic tube that's going to break down and in its plastic elements go into the soil. Because once you've got plastic particles in the soil, then the grass, the thistles and the trees will suck them up into themselves, and that affects the whole system. So actually, although on the package it looks better, I'd argue it's much worse than this. We'd ultimately end up taking this off at some point and binning it. And it's still plastic. There are still, you know, the Trust and other tree planting projects are always looking for alternatives. The fact is, for what we need to do, plastic is still the best one.
Seems like it is the best choice.
It could be worse.
You don't want to be blamed
Then
for it, or
that's a worse outcome.
So you mentioned that there were opportunities until about 2023 to plant trees, but are there still ways for people to volunteer and get involved with improving the wildlife of this area?
Yeah, so the initial project kind of concluded a couple of years ago, but it had been a great success and a lot of people did get involved. So the Woodland Trust is still very much active on site. There's a good team working on the ground to maintain the wildlife, and there are plenty of ways for people to get involved. The first one worth mentioning is volunteering. So there's a very committed group of volunteers, there's dozens of them, and you can volunteer in all sorts of different ways. You could be a wildlife volunteer to look at monitoring the wildlife on site, surveying the rainforest down in Barrow Bridge, or looking at the forest here at Walker Fold. You could be a historian volunteer who catalogues what happened on site and looks for information about, you know, stories that came from the estate. And plenty more beside that as well. There's also public events that I do some with the Trust for wildlife. So we do wildlife walks. There are bat walks at various times of the year, bird walks. There's art classes I know that they do as well, photography occasionally. So there's loads of events in that way as well. The best way to keep in touch with them, to know what's coming up, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter or X, and they're on TikTok. So they have an active TikTok as well.
Amazing.
So I'd check it out. Yeah, so
perfect. Lots of ways to get involved then, that's great. So we've come across, there's some holly here, but there's some marks on some of them. Can you tell me more about what those marks mean? Yeah,
so this is really interesting that these holly leaves have little yellow patches. And holly is a native British tree, and as such, it's a good tree to have. It does have obviously quite severe spikes, like the hawthorn, for stopping deer from eating the leaves, but it's not enough to stop the bugs. And so this yellow mark is that various insects, specially designed for holly, can drill a hole into its thick leaf and lay an egg on the inside of the leaf.
Okay.
And so the baby, the larva, then eats the leaf from the inside out. So it's protected from predators. Robins can't get in there.
Yeah.
It's protected from the cold, and it has a living larva. It can eat the leaf. And so this one is providing homes for British bugs, which then provide food for British birds.
Oh, okay. And is this damaging the holly overall though?
Yes, it is definitely sapping some of its energy, but this is also why native woodland is good, because we don't get a monoculture. And a monoculture is where you only get one thing growing.
Right.
Without the bugs, some of the trees would just dominate the others, and you'd only end up with the one tree and only the bugs that eat that tree, or if any at all. The pests sap a certain percentage of energy, but they don't kill the tree.
Okay.
And there are bugs for all native British trees, so all of them are being suppressed. And because none of them have got the outright advantage, none of them can overtake each other. And you end up with this diversity of trees, which equals a diversity of the rest of life.
Oh, so they balance each other out.
They
basically.
do. They keep control of everything.
Okay, interesting. So we just walked through Walkerfold Wood, but all of a sudden we're not faced with woodland. What is in front of us, and why is it so sparse all of a sudden?
Yeah, so Walkerfold Wood that we've gone through is a mixture of conifer and some native broadleaf trees like oak and holly, and then you get to where we're sat, and just to our left is a massive area of completely cleared woodland, which again seems at odds with what we've been talking about. We're planting trees in one way, but we're cutting them down somewhere else. And unfortunately, this is because this was a larch area of woodland. So there's a tree called a larch. It's a coniferous tree, and it got a disease.
Oh.
It got a disease called Phytophthora, which is affecting larches and is very contagious. And unfortunately, when you get it on your site, you have to try and control it, and the only way you can control a tree disease is by cutting the trees down and taking out the timber. And that's what's happened here. That's why it is so open and so exposed. I mean, I'll say I knew this wood when it was a larch wood, and when I first saw it like this, I stopped and gasped, because without the trees it doesn't look recognizable. For me, I was like, I don't know where I'm standing. It's so different from how it was, even though the only thing that's come out of it is the trees themselves, which in itself shows how good trees can be, because they give a hill a character, they give it a feeling. And ultimately, this might sound like a bad part of the story, but there is a silver lining. Larches are not native. They're not actually originally from Britain. They were planted here as part of several blocks of woodland on the estate for timber. And the timber was of a foreign conifer species, which is okay. Like, some birds of prey can use them to perch on, crossbills come to them specifically. So there are some species that do like these conifers, but they're not that great for biodiversity. And they're not what would have been here thousands of years ago. So by taking out the larches, we can use it as an opportunity to plant native trees. So to follow on from the trees above our heads and carry on that woodland, which is the most diverse you can hope for, and spread it into the area where the larch were, so that there's more homes for bugs, there's more homes for nuthatches and woodpeckers, which we have here, and tree creepers, and carry on the potential rainforest. Although again, we're kind of coming up out of Bowerbridge. It's windier up here, it's harsher, so even the type of woodland we're sat in might not be the same as in Bowerbridge. There's subtle differences. The wind, which you can probably hear, and hopefully you can still hear us, means that the trees have to cope with this the whole time. that can change even how they grow, how they look, and which trees can make it here. And that determines what species of plant, what insects can appear here.
Wow.
So yeah.
Fascinating, thank you so much.
Katie, we've come out of Walkerford Wood where we've just been down the way, and I've taken you out to the moorland edge. So this is an area which is a massive part of the Smithills Estate, new habitat, completely different, little tree cover, but there's a lot of heather which is behind us here, and more open kind of wet boggy patches higher up the hill as well, and everything you see from here is still the Smithills Estate.
Yeah, it's very beautiful here. I mean, for the first time, I would say it's quite peaceful, but there's a cold wind, isn't there, that's kind of very much encompassing it in it. How does it make you feel looking around?
Well, this place is pretty special for me because the spot behind us is called Burnt Edge.
Right.
Now, Burnt Edge is so named because at one point in history, a long time ago, it caught fire and it was the edge of a big fire, but not recent history. This was a long time ago, but it still holds the name.
Okay.
And it's a patch of heathland. Now, heathland and moorland are kind of interchangeable in many people's minds, but heathland is dominated by heather, the plant behind us, and moorland is more about upland grasses, boggy, wet, acidic environments, and that's further up.
Right.
This heathland is only, less than 10% of the estate, but it's one of the most important bits of it because for insects and invertebrates, this little patch is very diverse in terms of what lives here. The heather itself, some people actually say the heather is eternal because by catching fire it regenerates, and in that way, if it burns at the right time of life, technically it won't die. It'll just keep renewing itself over and over again. So it's kind of a Lazarus habitat. It's great for birds of prey, great for kestrels, great for owls who look for field voles and mice, and even the trees which are here, which are actually remnants of conifer plantations from the Forestry Commission age that were never harvested, although biologically they're not doing as good as oak, they're not doing as good as willow, they're not doing as good as holly. But the birds of prey do use those to rest in and to search for food. So the Trust took it as a decision to keep some of them, get rid of some of them, and encourage the heather to grow underneath the conifers, and that's what's been happening. So the heath is being encouraged to retake the hills slightly underneath the canopy of the heather. So for me, it's a good example of what the estate stands for, and also what happens within the British countryside at whole, which is you've got woodland, there's farmland up on the hill, there's moorland, there's heathland, there's a stream, there's all these different habitats, and they are not acting alone, none of them. So the animals that live in the heath come into the wood to use the trees, the animals that are in the wood come into the heath sometimes to forage for food, and it's how those habitats merge together to form a fully resistant and resilient wild space that me and you and people watching at home can come and visit to enjoy nature. And it's a great spot to see that.
Wow, I never knew any of that. Thank you so much. Wow.
That's all right. So Katie, we've explored Smithills now. Have you enjoyed today?
I've had a wonderful day. I learned so much. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome for coming, and we've only scratched the surface, you know. back the way we were, if you carried on walking to the mast, there's loads of space up there, there's loads of trails. You can certainly spend a full day walking here, and I thoroughly recommend, if you're interested, that you do come and explore here. There are maps online to look for the different routes that you can take, and there's information at the hall as well for the museum that you can take part in, for the opening hours of that as well. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's just wonderful to know that this is all on our doorstep, and the fact that I've never explored it before since living in Bolton is absolutely crazy. I feel like, thank you for telling me so much and so eloquently. It's just wonderful to hear about how all these different animals and insects and plants and us humans live together, and it's just so beautiful, and I'll definitely be coming back to exploring them all. So thanks so much, and you should definitely check it out. Come to Smithills Estate and explore all the wonders that we have done today.